Okay, so here we have both legs stitched, but they're not cut apart. And I just want to point out, if you do sew this on a sewing machine, you need to use the same approach that we have using the hand sewing, in that you draw them on the fabric and then you sew them on the sewing machine before you cut them apart, okay? Because otherwise you can end up jamming up your machine, because the needle can push the fabric down into the area of the bobbin, because you're working with very small seam allowances and very small areas and curves. So it's way easier to actually just top stitch around these while they are still together. Okay, so now what you need to do is use, you can use a paintbrush, you can use a pencil, you can use a skewer is a little bit too sharp, but if you made it, if you kind of sanded it down, we're going to actually turn our little legs inside out, or right side out, because they're actually inside out right now. You can also use your hands, but it's a little bit, depending on how small it is, it can be a little bit harder. But the knit fabric is stretchy, so that is a plus. Okay, so there we have one little leg. Okay, so now what we're going to do is stuff this with polyfill. And this is when you really need to, you can also use like a dowel or a pencil to get this pushed all the way down. If you are actually making a little cloth marionette, you need to put some weights in the feet. Like you could use some beans, you could use dry beans, you could also make some little pellets out of Sculpey clay and fire or bake those in the oven and use some of those. If you're just making a little cloth soft toy or sculpture, then it doesn't necessarily need to be weighted. It's just up to you if you want the legs or the feet to have some weight to them. Now, if you want your legs to have some joints, I'm going to take a little bit of this stuffing out. Okay, if you want your legs to have some joints, then only stuff it up to the point where the knees will be. Okay, so we need a little bit more. Okay, kind of blend it out. Okay, so our knee is going to be about there. And then you can stitch across these, and you can either use hand stitching or you can sew across on the sewing machine. So I'm going to show you how to do a stitch by hand for this. And we're just going to use the same chain stitch, but we're not going to actually tie a knot in the end of our string, because obviously we would have a knot on the outside and a tail, and it just wouldn't look that great. Okay, so I'm going to go through both layers, and then I'm going to be very careful and pull the tail just through the one in the back, okay? And now I have to be really careful so that you don't pull this out, because the tail is very, very short, okay? Then I'm going to actually go through again and come up exactly where this is. Okay, and then pull it snugly. You don't want to pull it too tight, otherwise you'll pull it all the way through again. And then one more time. And that one you can pull more tightly. Okay, so that's how we're going to start. Since this is not a seam, it's really not that critical, and you can always go back. Okay, now we're going to make a loop, and we're going to go down in the front and then up through both layers and then back up inside the loop. Go back down inside that little chain through both layers and then back up. Try to do a fairly straight line. It doesn't have to be perfect, but so it's just the very same chain stitch. This is why I like needles that have large eyes, because it's really quick to rethread your needle. Go back through the previous chain, through both layers, up through the new loop, pull snugly, now on the side where the seam is, you're going to be actually going through 4 layers of cloth, so just kind of realize that. Okay, and then when you get to almost to the end, we're just going to go around. Well, actually, I think I'm going to do one more chain. Okay, and then I'm going to go around where the last stitch came out on the back, and then I'm going to come back up through the inside of that. I'm going to do that twice. Okay, so that's the little knee joint. Okay, and then to tie it off, I'm going to go around to the back. Go under those 2 loops. That direction. Can never remember what direction I... Okay, and then go under them again the opposite direction and through that loop and make another knot the opposite direction. Okay, and then we're going to take this thread, go just through 1 layer and pull the thread through. Then we'll be stuffing the top half of the leg. polyfill as well. Okay, and don't stuff it so it's overflowing, just stuff it to that point. Okay, and so there you have that. And this leg is a little bit curving because I pulled these stitches a little bit on the tight side. It's really not that big of a deal if it's a little bit curved. This little character is, you know, not, it's soft, and it doesn't really matter if there are slight differences. So now we'll do the same thing to this leg.